Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. I have one of my favorite people in football with us today. It's Kevin Clark from ESPN and Omaha Productions. One of the smartest people around, in my estimation. He spent a lot of time in his career, whether it be at the Ringer, Wall Street Journal, or now at ESPN, really going deep on the Patriots and what has made them great through the years. So he's got a great perspective on what's going on right now with the Patriots. Of course, we'll have the Senator Phil Perry alongside too. Let's get it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bring in one of my favorite people in all of football. It's Kevin Clark from Omaha Productions and ESPN. He has a show called This is Football, and he just spoke to Devontae Smith. But let's get to Kevin. Kev, how are you?
What's going on, man? Just ended the Zoom with Devontae Smith. I was trying to fix my hair the entire episode. It wasn't happening for me. I need a haircut. But now I'm amongst friends, so I don't feel the need to fix my hair this entire episode.
You know the Senator Phil Perry, right?
Of course I know Phil Perry.
Are you kidding?
I'm so happy he's on the call.
We're going to share some hair tips a little bit later because I'm having a hard time too, but I think we can work this out together, Kev.
I think
I got it aggressively.
There's a day where you go, you kind of, it's like the game 21 in basketball, right? You got to get, the hair needs to be long so you can do stuff with it. But then there's going to be one day it just gets too long and you can never tell when that's going to be. And that's it for me today.
So when you go over, you have to go back. So that's basically where the 21 gets in. Yeah, my guy a couple of weeks ago, I sat down and he said, "You're 3-4?" I said, "No, I think we do a 4-5." He goes, "No, we do a 3-4." It was not a 3-4. I looked like a porcupine for 2 weeks. Kevin, how do you look at what is unfolding here in New England from a distance?
As a football observer, someone who studies football history, somebody who studied the Belichick era really closely, as much as anybody can outside of that market. You guys know far more than I do, but I try from a national perspective to really dig into what happened there over the past 25 years. And from that perspective, it kind of breaks my heart. Only because, and here's why. And I don't want anyone to get to jump on me, but it feels like the guy who always had the next idea is out of ideas. And that to me is someone who was always writing about the next idea or what he was able to do to gain an edge, whether that's via roster, whether that's via defensive scheme, offensive scheme. Hey, we're going to use this guy. I actually just heard, I was listening to a hockey podcast, no big deal, but Kenny Albert was on there and he was talking about how Belichick told him that they were the first team in Detroit when he was with Detroit 50 years ago to put two tight ends in the field, and they still call it the Detroit package because of that. And it's like he's always been at the cutting edge of football. And for me to see this team now, which not only has no personnel, no quarterback play to speak of, but just no ideas, that to me is a football tragedy. You knew this day would happen. Mm-hmm. Eventually it happens to every great coach, but I'm surprised at how bad it's gotten this quickly.
And Kevin, it's sort of the surprising elements of this team to me. There are three, and they impact different aspects of the team, of the organization. Number one is just the talent gap between them and all the contending teams. I think that is a surprise, although maybe if you track the Patriots drafting, it shouldn't be. There's the coaching aspect to this, the special teams penalties, the general sort of sloppiness on game day itself, which is surprising because I think a lot of people would still say, well, we look at Bill and you'd rather have him on the sidelines than most others, if not all others. So that has been a surprise. And then there's something that may just trickle down from those first two, but it's the buy-in element, things like tackling that have just sort of fallen off, energy, just it sort of, again, this is sort of observable on game day. But if you were looking at the Patriots the last month or so, you wouldn't look at them and say, there's a bought-in team. There's a team that's heeding its coach's message. So all three of those things are surprising to me. Is there one that stands out to you, though?
Yeah, so there's two. The first one is you look at the Sam Howell scramble on 3rd and 23 last week, and there's two tackles that were just miserable. And in any other era, of Patriots football, this would have been like a week-long story. Like, what the hell is going on with the tackling in the secondary? And it just all seems to run together now in this one big pile of mistakes. And the other thing I would say is the special teams lapses. And goes back to last year as well. Who prided themselves on special teams more than Bill Belichick? Who wanted to talk about long snapping and punting for 11 minutes at a time at press conferences? And the sloppiness that's developed there is emblematic of what you said, Phil, which is a team that has not bought in. And part of that is maybe sloppiness in roster management. That was something that Belichick was so good at, is just looking for the best 53 instead of the best 10, 15, 20, whatever it is, trying to rob Peter to pay Paul from the salary cap standpoint and say, hey, we can go light on this position and go heavy on this position and kind of understand what we need. And it just seems like the roster is not nearly as good. They don't have those kind of even though obviously there's some personnel left over on special teams, it just seems like the depth isn't there. And I think that's the biggest tragedy of this whole thing, is like the things that Belichick, as you said, was great at, just don't seem to be there anymore. It doesn't seem like he's got the details down. And it's funny because when with Devontae Smith, this episode's not out yet, but it will be tomorrow. He was talking about, I asked him how he mastered the toe drag, right? And he said, well, Coach Sirianni, they'll just drill balls at us in the middle of practice when we're by the sideline just to make sure we get our feet in bounds, right? And you think like that seems like an old Belichick trick. And the thing I was thinking about when he said that, and before I came on here, was like all of the things that Belichick had as an advantage. Nobody was doing situational football 20 years ago. I know that's something Rodney Harrison told me, where basically he came from San Diego. He gets to New England, they're doing situational stuff. And he's like, nobody does this. Nobody in the NFL does this except Bill Belichick. And you almost wonder if everybody does what Bill has been doing for 20 years now. And Nick Sirianni does it, and Andy Reid does it. And all of these coaches who may be in a different era couldn't be on Belichick's level are on Belichick's level. And they understand how to practice. They understand how to install things, get those little edges. And so that, again, goes back to what's next for Bill Belichick. And if he doesn't have that next counterpunch, it's just not going to work.
It's funny, you talk about that situational stuff. And I think that for a team is 700 level type work.
Yeah.
If you can't block, tackle, and figure out where you're supposed to be on a route, you can't worry about the toe drag stuff. But when you have Tom Brady and Randy Moss or Deion Branch, Wes Welker, you can go to the advanced stuff. You can take Gronk, Darrelle Revis, and Tom Brady and move them to another field during practice, as they used to do during training camp, and have them work together so that Brady can figure out when Gronk dips his shoulder, okay, well, he's going to do this. You can't have that telepathy now because you're still in the basic level of things. Speaking of Brady, there is the never-ending conversation about who did what and which was more important. Tom obviously left here, went to Tampa, won a Super Bowl, was highly effective, rejuvenated a franchise that was never really juvenated in the first place. The Patriots have nosedived. How do you decipher, I guess, what the link between the two men is in hindsight?
It changes all the time. And I was of the opinion the first year in Tampa that there was nothing that could change the past, that Belichick was the greatest coach of all time. Tom Brady was the best quarterback of all time. That settled history. And maybe it'll go from 50-50 to 55-45 at best. Mm-hmm. Right. And the more I see it, especially in the later years, the more it was Brady in helping Belichick install culture. What I mean by that is, you mentioned the 700 level work, right? I remember a story Brandon LaFell told me years ago about how they go to Miami and Brady lines up the receivers and is like, hey, we're just going to do a layup line of throws here where you guys are just staring at the sun, because the way the sun's coming down is you're going to have to get a couple in the sun. So I'm going to throw the ball up to you while you guys stare at the sun. Right. Not advisable for your health, but it worked. Right. But that to me is like, especially on the offensive side of the ball, like the people I've lost a lot of respect for are like Josh McDaniels and stuff, just because of the way that whole thing's developed.
Sure.
What I'll say about Belichick is managed the roster really well, gave Brady great defenses, and understood where the game was going in a really interesting way. 06 Josh McDaniels, who again I have a little respect for, but not as much as I used to, goes down and meets with Dan Mullen, figures out basically the spread offense, and by 07 they were able to use the middle of the field. They were able to have Moss on the outside, Wes Welker. They go out and acquire, obviously, such a huge piece of that. That wasn't Brady, right? That was a whole organization saying, we know where we need to get. And then the passing boom happens. Everybody's working on the outside of the field. Belichick goes out, gets 2 tight ends, and says, we're just going to work the middle of the field over and over and over again. And you saw the fruits of that. And so it looks like to me that Belichick gave the building blocks for Brady to succeed, which is not how I would have put that even a couple of years ago. I still think Belichick is the best coach of all time, but I just have a completely different view of Brady's role in that entire thing and how much he, I think, installed a culture there alongside Belichick. And I saw a really funny tweet I think about all the time right after the Bucs won that Super Bowl. It was basically someone said, Tom Brady looked at a random team and said, y'all want to win the Super Bowl? And you think about it, and it's like, how many times? And I understand, like, yeah, the last Super Bowl they won was 13-3 over the Rams, and they needed a McCourty miracle on the defensive end to change the entire context of that game. I understand that, but on the other end, Tom Brady took a lot of teams that were not Super Bowl teams and dragged them across the finish line. Belichick had a lot to do with that, but every time I see Belichick fail on Sunday, I think, okay, we're going to add half a percentage point to the Tom Brady credit pie.
I'll say one quick thing on that 2018 team. It wasn't that good. They lost 5 regular season games. Every single one of them was to a non-playoff team. I mean, it just was not well constructed, but McDaniels, Belichick, Brady, they pivoted and they made it work. But it's funny because that was kind of the story of the decade, I think, last decade. Is how much Brady was doing to paper over what was going on. Phil, go. Sorry.
Well, Kevin, I mean, let's continue on with this in just a little bit different vein. Do you think the league looks at it the same way you're looking at it? Do you think the league looks at the post-Brady Patriots and looks at Bill Belichick and says, because we know, and you cover the league the way you do, there are going to be 6 or 7 head coaching openings maybe by the end of this year. Are there going to be teams that are clamoring for Bill Belichick, calling Robert Kraft and saying, hey, Robert, we know it didn't work out all that hot for you guys this year. Would you be interested in trading us Bill Belichick for a high-end draft pick? Do you think there are going to be teams out there that are interested in Belichick that way?
So the interesting rumor last week was the Commanders were going to trade for him, and Josh Harris was going to unload the Brinks truck for Bill Belichick. Well, Bill Belichick just lost to Ron Rivera, who's about to get fired. So I don't know how that changes things if you're Josh Harris. The problem for me is that if you're Josh Harris and you pay for Bill Belichick and draft picks and money, Bill Belichick is going to want the same power and runway he has now. And I'm not sure I would grant that. I would not let Bill Belichick run my drafts. I'd certainly let Bill Belichick. There's 2 things I would do. Either pay him a ton of money to be my kind of football czar and give me big picture, 35,000 feet viewpoints, almost like Bill Parcells was a little bit in Miami, with a little less control of the draft, getting evaluated in there as GM, or just coach the team. Just coach the team. Somebody else buys the groceries, and we'll give this to you. And you come up with the schemes, and you teach the guys in our building ball. What I would not do is give him the same role that he has now, where he just oversees everything and does everything. I think he can oversee things, but not do everything. So I don't know what the appetite would be. I put this question on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. I just said, who would realistically go out and send a Godfather offer to Bill Belichick? And a couple of people DM me or texted me inside and outside the league, but at least close to the league. And they basically said there's probably going to be 5 or 6 owners. I don't know if Josh Harris is in this grouping, but weak owners who want to, it's like the old saying about in business, nobody gets fired for buying IBM, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with that concept, but like, don't take risks if you're a bad owner, right? You just say, like Jimmy Haslam going out and hiring Mike Holmgren as team president. And you just get to say, well, we hired Mike Holmgren. I don't know what you want me to do. And it's like, well, that wasn't actually the solution. But weak ownership, you meant Wayne Huizenga going out and hiring Bill Parcells, Nick Saban. They want big names to put the blame on, right? And so if you're David Tepper right now and Frank Reich looks like a total disaster, the solution there is to hire a huge name, turn it over to him, and almost outsource the blame, if that makes sense. And just say, hey, we hired Bill Belichick. It's his job to fix this. I'm going to go play 18. I'm going to go down to Pinehurst and play 36 a day. Okay. That has typically been the sign of an owner who wants to get out of a jam. And we mentioned that a couple of times in Cleveland, a couple other places. People had mentioned the Spanos family, perhaps that kind of thing. The Spanos family doesn't want to spend that kind of money.
No.
And they're not gonna. And also, even if they spent that much money on Bill Belichick, Belichick would know that the Spanos family doesn't want to spend $1 more than that. And so he's not going to go to a place like that. So the market shrinks, every time Belichick loses to a team like the Commanders and the Commanders owner says, I don't really want a guy who just lost to Ron Rivera. But then I just generally, it shrinks because he becomes less of a solution in those owners' minds, and you don't get to outsource it as much. There'd be other big names kind of available. At the beginning of the year, people were just throwing out all sorts of veteran coaches who could be on the market. I remember a couple of weeks ago, somebody was like, is John Harbaugh going to be in the market? No, he's not. They might win the Super Bowl this year. Belichick might be the only kind of veteran type guy who's actually available in December or January. But I think that if you're an owner, I know this sounds incredibly strange to say, you can probably do better.
That's where they are. And that's why I say to you, does it appear from afar now, finally, because people would clutch their pearls at the notion that Bill Belichick was on the hot seat 3 months ago. Does it seem inevitable from the outside, as inevitable as it does here, that Bill is in the winter of his tenure here? And
so
inevitably ending.
I thought I had done a thing on my show maybe a month ago when things looked like they were headed south and not returning. I thought he'd get a year longer than he should because of the goodwill and the grace he'd built up. Now, the flip side of that is, would he want a retirement tour? Would he want to be Mariano Rivera getting a canoe from he goes to MetLife and they're giving him like a clock or something? Does he want that? No, he doesn't want that. So if Kraft had sat him down and said, hey, we want to give you one more year, say your goodbyes, go into all these different places, and they do a little tribute video of all the times that they played. I'm not even sure Bill would want that necessarily. But what I thought was the Kraft would give him the opportunity to get one more year than he should. The way things have gone, the way that the entire post-Brady era has developed, and how the Brady era ended, by the way, everything seems to lead itself towards him not getting an extra year. And this being his final year. You guys know far more than I do, but it just seems like it becomes inevitable at some point. You mentioned the word inevitable that we're in the winter. I didn't think it would get this bad. I didn't think Mac Jones would be this, I don't want to say hopeless, but someone in the league texted me yesterday and just said, who has a better career from this point forward, Sam Howell or Mac Jones? And I was thinking, like, could you imagine that question being asked 6 weeks ago? Wouldn't be even a question in anybody's mind. And I think it's still Mac Jones, but like, that's the conversation this staff has put Mac Jones in, is does he even have a future in this league? And I didn't expect that. And so it's looking like a little bit, I just don't see a path forward. And my guess is Robert Kraft doesn't either.
Phil, was this the bonus year?
That was the first thing that popped into my mind. Maybe this is the extra year, based on how last year went and how Robert Kraft was even talking 2 off seasons ago about how they need to contend, not just make the playoffs, but contend like right now. I remember asking him at the owners meetings, like, you mean like right now? Yes. Yeah, right now. And they're not close to that, and they're going in the wrong direction. So maybe this is that bonus year that Kevin mentions, Tom.
Last game of the season, Jets at Patriots.
Yeah.
Could be really
with Rodgers back.
With Rodgers hobbling around with no crutches. I don't know. Maybe that's the finale. Going against a team he resigned on a napkin with.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NSBO and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Massachusetts, Hope is here. First online real money wager only, $5 pregame moneyline wager required. First online real money wager only, $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com, gamblinghelplinema.org, or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start, GameSenseMA.com, or call 1-800-GAM-1234.
Kevin, I want to ask you, just because you did mention Mac Jones, and he has been a problem in his own right. The weapons around him have been a problem. I'm wondering if you think, because this is a conversation that Tom and I have had a few times, but you not only are watching all of these offenses around the league and these different unbelievably talented quarterbacks do their thing, but you've tracked the Patriots offense and its development over the course of time very closely too, I know. You look at the Giants, you look at the Patriots, you look at the Raiders under Josh McDaniels. These are all Patriots adjacent offenses, and they are the 3 lowest scoring offenses in football. Is this Patriots style scheme a dinosaur? Can you still run it the way that it has been run for so long and in other places without Tom Brady as its quarterback and have success, or do the Patriots and other teams have to pivot?
I guess my question is, where is the wrinkle been? Like I mentioned, all of the little innovations they've had over the past 25 years and going back even further, when you consider the lineage of that offense, what's been the new innovation? I haven't seen one. And you think about what Mike McDaniel does on every single weekend. And it's interesting because I'm of the opinion that play calling in general is overrated. And I know that seems like a hot take, but like 95% of a play doing well is effort and execution. And then the bells and whistles are on top of that. But in a league where a lot of teams have depth, a lot of teams have quarterbacks who can throw the ball, guess what? Everybody has effort and execution. So then the tiebreaker becomes, what are you doing with that effort and execution? And Kyle Shanahan is working miracles with it. Mike McDaniel is turning Tua into an MVP candidate. All around the league, and someone like Josh Allen in the division, I don't think Dorsey is lighting the world on fire as a play caller, but they've got skill guys everywhere, and Josh Allen is a special athlete at that position. So everybody has an advantage over the Patriots. And I just felt like, my favorite game that Belichick ever coached was the Jacoby Brissett against the Texans game, where it was the 4-game suspension for Brady. Garoppolo gets hurt, and it was a Thursday night game against Bill O'Brien, a pretty good Texans team. And we were just like, all right, you know what? Belichick is just going to say, he's just going to get in his bag and say, I'm going to win this game in the weirdest possible way. And nobody knew who Jacoby Brissett was back. I mean, they knew him from college, but he didn't have a long track record. And he just went out and they just did a play calling masterclass. And they just said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to win this game. I've always felt Brissett is not this. But I've always felt like one of the reasons I liked the Cam Newton signing was I always felt like there was more creativity with Bill Belichick than Brady. I know this sounds crazy, but Brady, there's only a couple things you could do with Brady. Go out there and let him cook, just like, hey, Tom, you got this, go ahead. And the reason I like the Cam Newton signing, especially off the bat, is that I felt like Belichick was always kind of in press conferences fantasizing about a running quarterback and talking about Tebow and the single wing and all of this stuff. And he loved it. And again, like, I just think that the world, once you're after Brady, the world was available to him from a scheme perspective. And this is true of Josh McDaniels. It's true of all of these Patriot guys, Joe Judge in New York. And it just felt like they went the lazy option. And they got in. I think Mac Jones had a chance. I think he processed well, and I think he gets rid of the ball quickly, which things a lot of young quarterbacks don't do. But I just felt like he went the creativity in the offense just never developed in the way I thought it would. And that is disappointing me. And I agree with your phrasing. It's a little bit of a dinosaur as far as offenses go.
Funny you mentioned that Jacoby Brissett game. I guess the other one that would fit into your category would be the Bills wind game that they won.
Yes, 100%.
What are you doing? Well, we're not going to throw. We're not throwing. It's 2020. Yeah, but I don't care. Watch this. Get out of my way.
Run plays. We got 4 run plays. That's all we need, baby.
That game, I know the Bills eventually got their revenge, but like that game, like destabilized the Bills franchise for like a month.
Oh yeah.
They were just like, oh God.
I need to ask you, since Mac might be on the way out and Bill as well, the Patriots heading towards a top 5 pick. Caleb Williams is the defending Heisman Trophy winner.
Mm-hmm.
it's fine to show your emotions. It's fine to cry. We all understand that. But his post game Saturday night seemed a little much. And when teams are going to scrutinize, how well does he identify with his teammates? How well does he go to his teammates first and share his emotions with them? And how well does he deal with adversity? I wonder if Saturday night and Caleb Williams in general are going to take a hit in this upcoming draft. And will he drop?
I don't think he'll drop. I think that's where your scouts who are on the ground. I mean, it's funny because everybody is, the last month or so, everybody's been kind of joking about the value of a GM or a director of college personnel going to games and being in the press box and getting that press box food. But you got to be on the ground in order to understand what Caleb Williams means to his locker room. And I don't know. And I can't glean that from what I see on TV. You know, I think a lot about, this is a little bit of a different bucket, but like, I think a lot about Dan Campbell, where everybody's making fun of Dan Campbell's public persona when he first gets the job, biting kneecaps and all that stuff. And then I went to Detroit, and everybody in Detroit is like, this is the most real dude on the planet. And like what you saw in the press conference, like we actually love that side of him, you know? And so with Caleb, I think it comes down to, I don't think he'll drop because of this. I do think that what scouts will ask the question is, you know, what's the, I don't know how to phrase this. I think scouts will see what his connection is with his teammates almost separate from what we see on TV. The TV copy is very rarely looked at, whether that's on actual plays or post game. So I think that comes down, you know, listen, they knew they were firing the defensive coordinator after the game. Caleb Williams basically is, I think Lincoln Riley wasted him. You're talking about a Heisman Trophy winner and a nailed on first overall pick. And I think Caleb Williams is processing the fact that his college career underachieved from a team perspective, and it probably wasn't his fault. He put up 42 points. It was the damn defensive coordinator who was fired 2 years too late that was the problem there. So I think processing that is legitimate. And I would not ding him at all for that. I think that the Patriots probably have a problem in as much that if they're going to go quarterback, it would be the third best quarterback in this draft. I don't know who that's going to be. Is it going to be, you know, Bo Nix is old. Michael Penix. We don't know.
Are they better than Mac? That's what they have to do.
I was actually just going to say that. Is Bo Nix that much of an upgrade on Mac Jones that you would want to do it? Do you go? And first of all, if I'm Robert Kraft, and this plays into it, do we trust this version of Bill Belichick with a great young quarterback? Because he had a young quarterback and he hired Matt Patricia and Joe Judge to be the offensive coaches around him. I know Bill O'Brien's in the building now, and how Bill O'Brien works with young quarterbacks is also a different question. But I guess the question is, if you're Robert Kraft and you're saying we need a quarterback at pick 5, at pick 6, whatever it is, and it's going to end up being Riley Leonard or whomever, do you trust this staff, or do you want to bring in a different type of guy, Ben Johnson from Detroit, for instance, who's unlocked golf in a different way in Detroit in the last couple of years? So I think it's a huge question. I don't think Caleb Williams and his post-game emotion is going to play that much into it at all.
Yeah, and I think that just to say that it's a fraught conversation because you don't want to be judgmental about somebody expressing emotion to the point where you're like, archaic, it's 1950. We do understand that men are emboldened to show how they feel. To me, it's not going with your team and then not being able to get, you're going to be working with 30-year-olds with, you know, families and, you know, 40 and 50-year-old coaches who have their livelihoods depending upon you. And if that's how just absolutely overwrought you become, it's like, okay, you know, how are we going to get this back under control?
I just come at it from the angle, Kevin. If the Patriots somehow have an opportunity to draft this guy, which I don't think they will, quite honestly, there are too many teams that are dying for the top pick or even the second pick that have more ammo, so to speak, to move up there if they need to. The Patriots aren't in a position to be turning down that kind of talent, even if you do ding them for this kind of thing, right? This is ostensibly the kind of talent that could lift all boats, and they aren't in position to be turning that down, in my opinion.
I completely agree. Listen, you've seen emotion in college for these kids when they're 21 or 22 years old. you just never know how it's going to play with coaches. Some of them probably like it. I mean, Max Duggan's from TCU broke down in tears last year. I'm trying to remember. I think JJ Watt was really tearful after a loss when he was at Wisconsin. Yeah, Adam Morrison, famous NBA player that worked out. No, I think the college emotion. You never know how this stuff is going to play, and that's with everything, is how coaches view this stuff. And I remember, and this is a little separate, but when I was at Miami, Jack Nicklaus's grandson, his kid named Nick O'Leary, he was a really good tight end, and he got suspended for the year for flicking off a ref. And he ended up going to Florida State. And I remember talking to a coach a couple days later. I was like, oh, Nick, and I'm like 20. And I'm like, oh, Nick O'Leary flicked off a ref. That's going to be a problem. And he said, let me tell you something. He said, every coach in America is calling Nick O'Leary right now because they want the guy who flicked off the ref. Because that means he cares. And like, I think about that a lot, where it's like, we sit here and we go, oh, wow, that's a behavioral problem. And it's like, no. Coaches are like, give me that guy. Give me the guy who flicked off the ref because he cares in a random Palm Beach high school game. So it's always hard to say how different emotions will play inside buildings. And it's case by case. Some teams want the emotional guy. Some people want robots.
Kev, this was great. Kept you longer than I wanted to. Well, I wanted to keep you as long as I could, but I kept you longer than I advertised. Thank you for the insight.
Appreciate you, buddy.
All right. Thanks so much to Kevin Clark. Again, it's with ESPN and Omaha Productions. You can follow him on all kinds of social media, Twitter, TikTok, as he mentioned, and Instagram. Okay. We'll see you again on Thursday. I'm going to have our guest. It's going to be Bill Polian, former Colts executive, NFL Hall of Fame general manager and coach. I'm going to pick his brain as a Bill Belichick contemporary and one who's been around the NFL for a long time about what Bill's confronting right now and what the Patriots are confronting post-Bill, if that is what comes to pass. Talk to you then.